千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. There's this thing called the Pareto Principle. So it is oftentimes known as the 80-20 rule. So this is one way to whittle down complexity to focus on the truly important. The 80-20 rule basically says that for anything that you tackle, you're going to have to realize that the Pareto Principle applies. Of all the things that you could possibly do, there's only about 20% of it that will yield most of the results. 20% of what you can do will yield 80% of your results. The other 80%, the parts that's identified in gray here, those are good things to do, no doubt about it, but they will yield 20% of the results. So these numbers are meant to be rough and not precise, but generally speaking, it is the principle of unequal distribution in the world. There's very few instances of true symmetry in the world. Most everything is asymmetrical or unequal. It may not be exactly 80-20 that you come across. It could be something like 85-15. It could be also something that doesn't add up exactly to 100%. So for instance, you could have something like a 90-20-20 situation where 20% of the things that you can do will yield 90% of the results. And the other stuff that you don't do, the 80%, will only yield 10% of the results. So just keep the unequal distribution in mind. So here's the bullet to state what I just said. Of all the things you can do at any one time, roughly 20% of them will yield roughly 80% of the results. That just means that there are certain things that are more important than anything else. And not all things that you can do are equally important. There's always unequal distribution. All right, so you can keep applying this until you end up with the one most important thing you have to do next. So let me keep it simple and explain. And I'll use a very simplified example. Let's just suppose at the beginning, there's 100 things that you can do, or 100 things so this applies to both living your life and leading a team. So maybe there's 100 things that the team can take on, or when it comes to managing your own life, this could mean that when you have all this energy and people coming together and things falling into alignment for you, there's 100 things that you can do, 100 things that you can get into to improve yourself, to learn, to get into. That could be a lot of fun. So 100 things. Now, in the simplified example, only 20% of the 100 things, 20 items out of 100 are going to be way more important, are going to be several times more important than the rest, the 80%. So as you look at the 100 things, either for yourself or for your team, you're going to want to start picking out the 20% that will make the most difference, or more of a difference than the other 80%. So let's just say that you are proficient with this process. So very quickly you identify 20 things. Then what you're going to want to do is that you're going to want to apply the Pareto Principle again to the 20%. You're going to want to look at the 20% of the 20%. So that means out of the 20 items that you have identified, there's going to be 4 of them that are more important than the rest, the 16. So picking and choosing the 4 items there gives you the Pareto of the Pareto, the 20% of the 20%. Then after that, and this is going to be easy, when you have only 4 items, it will be easy to identify the one of them that is more important than anything else. So look at what you have done. You have whittled down the complexity of 100 things to do to a list of 20, the important stuff, and then a list of 4, the most important stuff, and then the one thing that is the most important of all. So that's how you apply the Pareto Principle. Now, I want to talk about a different principle. The Pareto Principle is entirely Western in origin. It's excellent. I use it all the time. I regard it as part of the Tao. But there's also the Eastern perspective, the Tao Principle, that is different than the Pareto Principle. So what is it? Well, it's another way to accomplish the same thing. In this other way, I want you to recall a sequence that we have looked at before from Tao of Jing, chapter 42. So the sequence specifically is this. Tao produces 1, 1 produces 2, 2 produce 3, 3 produce myriad things. This is from the beginning of chapter 42 of the Tao of Jing. What is it about? It's about how the Tao, the void, is coming in to be differentiated from nothingness into oneness. That's the first line. Then the oneness is polarized into 2 complementary dualities. That's the yin and yang symbol that you see right now. The 2 produce 3. That's the interaction of the 2. Yin and yang get into each other's territory. Then, as the interactions continue, everything else follows. Okay, so this is how reality and existence work. So when you face many choices, the realization that I want for everybody is that you are at the state of the myriad things. And what I want you to do is to work the sequence backwards. So from the myriad things, you want to reduce down to the 3. The 3 would be the yin and yang, the 2 primary factors, plus their interactions. Then from the 3, you subtract the interactions of the yin and yang, the 2 primary factors, you go from 3 to the 2. Then from the 2, you meld them into the 1. So this is another way to accomplish the same objective. So here's the bullet to describe that. Identify the 3 factors among them that produce the rest, the yin and yang and the interactions. Then go back to the 2 and finally go back to the 1. So this is another very useful way to think about complexity. And now we have covered both the Western technique, the Pareto Principle, and the Tao Principle, the Eastern technique. Whichever one you do is completely up to you. There's nothing to stop you from using both. Whatever is the most convenient, most helpful, go with that or go with both of them and then compare your results. Either way, the idea is that you want to be able to stick to the basics, build the fundamentals, identify the one thing that is important, and then start doing that. Once you have done that, In the Pareto context, you can also then move on to the list of the most important 4. And when you have done that, you can then move on to the important 20 out of 100. And by that time, everything should be in smooth sequence. Everything is effortless, and you will know exactly what to do for the rest of the complexity. Extremely useful, and I want you to keep these in mind as you practice the teaching of plainness and simplicity. When you need to streamline and simplify anything, do the Pareto Principle or the Tao Principle or both. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.